Hi, welcome back to today's Soapbox. So, the first piece published on today's Soapbox is 1 year old. To celebrate this milestone, I am re examining every topic I wrote about over the past year and giving relevant updates or thoughts on what has happened since each article was published. Let's start with the pop culture moments. The first is the article Meet American Girl, a nuanced look at the dolls that radicalized a generation. To celebrate 40 years of American Girl, today's Soapbox explored the characters the company has created and marketed to young girls in a YouTube video. These characters have been a staple in so many girlhoods across the US and beyond, teaching young women to stand up for what they believe in and be good friends to each other. Secondly, A Tale of Two Supermen. When writing about this topic, I thought it was niche enough that it would be a one-time thing. Dean Cain, who previously played Superman and made a cameo in the Supergirl TV series, has continued to speak about woke issues as well as DC Comics related issues. Recently, a second film in James Gunn's Superman universe was released. Supergirl stars Millie Alcock as Kara Zor-El, cousin of Superman that briefly appeared in the 2025 film. Cain initially asked social media how Supergirl has ear piercings if her skin is bulletproof, but one of his followers replied, comparing her appearance to Chaka from Land of the Lost, an ape-like humanoid. Cain reacted to this reply favorably, co-signing the derogatory comment against Alcock's appearance. These films have been criticized by people on the political right due to their woke subject matter, which includes immigration, colonialism, human trafficking, and refugeeism. These are not new themes to the Superman franchise. They have been present in the comics since the very beginning. With more films set in this universe in production and set to arrive in theaters in the coming years, time will tell if this pattern of Cain being critical of these adaptations will be continued. Thirdly, telling you what you want to hear, the dangers of AI psychosis. The effects of AI usage on mental health came into focus when a social media user detailed her experience in which AI chatbots convinced her that her therapist was obsessed with her. Her dependence on communication with ChatGPT and Claude warped her view of the situation, turning into psychosis symptoms. AI continues to prove controversial, particularly its usage in the arts and media. With more data centers being built, the projected future of AI seems to be growth. It continues to worm its way into all of our lives, from event flyers to YouTube thumbnails and advertisements. Choosing to not engage with AI is a harder and harder choice every day as it becomes integrated into every website and app possible. It's getting harder to avoid, which puts the public at a continued risk of spiraling into AI psychosis. I believe the story covered in the article is merely the first of many like it. To continue resisting the influence of AI, it is important to disengage with AI-generated posts. This can look like simply not giving them attention, not liking, commenting, sharing, etc., or going as far to report them as AI or misleading if that is possible on the platform. While this issue grows more complicated and controversial, it is crucial that we celebrate human voices and intelligence. Numbers 4 and 5 are Benito Bowl, Why is a Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show so controversial? And Benito Bowl, ¿Por qué el espectáculo de Bad Bunny en el intermedio de la Super Bowl es tan controvertido? And I added to that one, Juntos Somos América, connecting people through representation. So all three of those were about the Bad Bunny halftime show. The Bad Bunny halftime show was a record-breaking success, receiving 9 Primetime Emmy nominations. He beat the previous record of 6 nominations held by Lady Gaga for her 2017 show. This victory is still somewhat shared as she featured in Bad Bunny's show as well. Bad Bunny continues to tour the world and enjoy the success of his 6th studio album, despite the criticism from politically motivated individuals. The recording of the performance has over 22 million streams on Spotify and 148 million views on YouTube. Bad Bunny's music has appeared in FIFA World Cup 2026 ad breaks. In a year of unity around sports with the World Cup, 2026 Milano Cortina Winter Olympics, and the New York Knicks win at the NBA Finals, Bad Bunny's music has become the soundtrack of celebration in New York, Puerto Rico, and beyond. Article 6. The Art of Defeating Ticketmaster. At the time of writing the article, I was not as familiar with Olivia Dean's music as I would have liked to be. I covered the situation with tour ticket sales without addressing the quality of her album, The Art of Loving. I'm happy to share that I've listened to it several times since writing, and I believe it to be an absolute work of art. Dean ended up winning Best New Artist at the Grammys in February 2026, building on the momentum from the Ticketmaster situation. This win was deserved after she burst onto the music scene with songs like Man I Need and So Easy to Fall in Love. Her vocal performance style is incredibly soothing while also having a strong driving energy. One of the most addictive songs on the album is Baby Steps. With catchy refrains to sing under your breath while you go about your day, the song is impossible to forget once you've heard it. Another personal favorite is I've Seen It, a sweeping song with melodies that ascend and descend to paint a beautiful picture at the end of the tracklist. In my opinion, Olivia Dean fully deserves the goodwill she is receiving. She has integrity as an artist, her sound is unique, her songs are great, and she exudes calm and peaceful energy. Article 7. Recapping all 5 seasons of Stranger Things. The final season of Stranger Things was shut out of major categories for the 2026 Emmys, instead being nominated for Behind the Scenes Awards. While I enjoyed watching and rewatching the show to prepare for Season 5, the overall experience of the show ending came with a mix of emotions. It's easy to be disappointed by the finale of a show you have invested a lot of time in. Characters that you have grown up alongside are hard to let go and move on from, which I found to be true to my experience moving on from this franchise. It can be scary to accept the change that the show is over. This change also affects the cast, who have to cope with understanding their identity outside of this role. I don't believe that the legacy of the show's finale will be a positive one, and unfortunately that seems to taint the overall perception of the show. As the years go on, Stranger Things may be able to reclaim its position in pop culture, otherwise it may go the way of Game of Thrones, overshadowed by the disappointing finale. Article 8. Anyone Can Be Barbie. There has been another interesting stride in disability representation in kids media. The new film Minions and Monsters, a story from the Despicable Me universe from Illumination Entertainment, features a minion named Ed. Ed uses Minionese Sign Language, a form of sign language thoughtfully developed to showcase how this minion communicates. This may seem silly and trivial, but it marks a new kind of representation for its young viewers. The children watching this movie will see a non-human character signing, normalizing that form of communication in the movies they watch. Hopefully, representation like the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network Barbie and Ed will encourage children to grow up embracing diverse neurotypes and abilities, providing representation for neurodivergent children, and preparing kids to treat disabled peers as equals. Article 9. Disney's America, the Vision of the USA That Never Was. After the release of this article, Disney Parks confirmed that their plans to build a park in Abu Dhabi are going forward. A year after announcing the park's development, the confirmation assured fans that it is still in long-term planning despite ongoing conflicts in the region. The conflict between the U.S. and Iran seems to be reigniting after an unsuccessful ceasefire period, which could lead to future changes to plans. Article 10. It Still Hasn't Ended With Us, and special update, it finally ended with us. After the settlement in the Lively versus Wayfarer legal case, Justin Baldoni and his wife, Emily, released a video about the effect the legal battle has taken on them. They thanked supporters and highlighted the gratitude they have felt during the multi-year saga while also expressing the fear and injustice they have experienced. This response feels incongruent with the decision made in the case. It frames the Baldonis as solely victims of a smear campaign and harassment, rather than at the center of accusations that Justin Baldoni did the same to Blake Lively and her circle. Blake Lively has received negative media coverage after the settlement, especially as she did not attend the highly publicized private wedding of former bestie Taylor Swift to athlete Travis Kelce. Lively and her family were photographed elsewhere during the event, raising questions about their invite status. This has led to speculation that Swift and Lively are no longer friends. Both Lively and Baldoni are still under the public's microscope, with every move being picked apart to analyze the perceived fallout of the legal saga. These lawsuits may have cost them peace of mind and friendships, so it leads us to wonder, was all of this worth it? Article 11. Traditionally published fanfiction, the trend that is taking over mainstream publishing and Hollywood. The bookish community is continuing to see popular works adapted into visual media, like the book Off Campus and even epics like the Odyssey. However, these works are not based on traditionally published fanfiction. Article 12. Eurovision for Dummies, explaining the global phenomenon to Americans. It wouldn't be an international competition if it wasn't corrupt, right? Eurovision's more famous cousin, the FIFA World Cup, was in full swing across North America and is facing just as many allegations of rigging as the singing competition was just months earlier. From world leaders leveraging their social media platforms to accusations that the winner has been determined since before the contest began, the controversies surrounding both competitions are very similar. The people of participating countries unite around their entry, fighting for a win and showing up to support their team. Those without a horse in the race root for another team, joining in on the excitement. The beauty of international competition cannot be dulled by corrupt organizations, and the ESC and World Cup prove that contest after contest. Article 13. They keep using the R word on Euphoria. Euphoria has concluded and is taking one final turn at the Emmys. The show currently has 7 nominations, including an acting nomination for Coleman Domingo and a 3rd nomination for Zendaya in the starring role of Rue after winning the last awards. Despite the Emmy-nominated aspects of the show, fans were not pleased with the content of the show for a variety of reasons, including misogyny and ableism. Meanwhile, the social media short-form content I posted on the Today's Soapbox YouTube channel was met with individuals disagreeing that this issue was relevant or worth discussing. The show continues to divide, and it doesn't seem to be a good enough project to hold up against the response. Now let's look at the album reviews. These album reviews are Harry Styles All the Time, album occasionally, reviewing You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love, and Another Year, Another Taylor Swift album. Reviewing these 3 albums has been a lot of fun, but it has pushed me to listen to music differently. During the editing process, it became clear that I often found it hard to describe why I liked a song specifically, making it harder for a reader or listener to understand my perspective. I definitely entered the writing process with a preconceived idea about how I felt about that artist. It was easier to write critically about Taylor Swift's album because I knew that I did not view the lyricism positively. I already was informed by the cultural conversation around the album, leading me to have more specific thoughts on the subject and articulate them more clearly. With Harry Styles, I don't think there was a way that I would have written a negative review of the album. Because he is known for weird lyrics and imagery, I was prepared to not understand aspects of the album and promotion. I was less critical of anything that was unclear to me and perceived it more as artistry than as a mistake. I am proudest of the Olivia Rodrigo album review because I think it is the most reasonable. I chose not to engage with the hype leading up to its release, instead opting to listen to it on my own time rather than the minute it was released. This also lowered the stakes, which was helpful in getting me to slow down and feel things. My editor was very helpful for this review as well, giving clear feedback about what I needed to expand on. In the future, I want to review more albums at the time of release, but I am also interested in reviewing older albums that have been out for a few months or even out for a few decades. My first journalistic work was an album review, so I definitely can see myself continuing to write that kind of piece. Now let's look at the film and media reviews. These are for Frankenstein, Wicked for Good, K-Pop Demon Hunters, Eternity, and Project Hail Mary. I reviewed 4 films as part of my SUDS experiment that provided an additional article, usually a film review, during the off week between main articles. I used a subscription model for this, but I ended up not really enjoying that process. When I reviewed Project Hail Mary, I was able to slow down and enjoy the film calmly, and I feel that the product resulting from that was better overall. Of this list of movies, I have rewatched all of the films except for Wicked for Good, which is definitely my least favorite of those films. My favorite is probably Project Hail Mary, especially now that I have read the book. I anticipate it being on my list of top 10 of 2026. Some of the most anticipated films of the year have not been theatrically released yet, so make sure to submit requests for certain films you would like me to watch and review as an article, or consider for the top 10 at the end of the year. Now, let's look at the policies and politics. One area that has been covered relatively frequently in today's soapbox has been law and policy related topics, including crime, media, politics, and legal protection. Exploring these topics can be heavy, so I haven't covered them as frequently as compared to more lighthearted pop culture topics. The selection covered over the last year represents a very small section of what has been going on in U.S. politics. Barring large news stories that cannot be ignored, the law and policy sections of the site will hopefully be able to stay distinct from the coverage by other news sources and continue to be based on my personal passions and interests. Without further ado, here's Article 22. Their trauma is not your entertainment, the ethics of the true crime genre. Since the release of the Ethics of True Crime article, Netflix and other streaming platforms have continued to produce crime documentaries that go viral, shining a new light on cases and bringing them to the forefront of popular conversation. One of the standout examples of this is The Crash, which has increased awareness about the murders of Dominic Russo and Davion Flanagan. As expected, most of the attention from this case has focused on the perpetrator of the crime. In the previous article, I criticized reenactments for emphasis on the perpetrators of violent crimes instead of the victims. The Crash, while not a reenactment, is an example of a perpetrator-centered narrative. The case is often talked about in media coverage as the Mackenzie Shirilla case, rather than by Russo and Flanagan's names. This area of content has not changed much since the release of the article, showing that people are still very susceptible to hype and excitement about true crime. The genre has even grown with the addition of true crime podcasts to Netflix's offerings. With more ways to tune in and less ways of holding creators accountable, true crime coverage will continue to be an issue for the families and friends of victims. 23. Protecting private childhoods. As the need for digital privacy protection for children becomes clearer, legislative bodies are seeking ways to rise up and meet the need. Some state legislatures have enacted laws to meet the emerging need for protection and regulation in online spaces. The biggest change comes to those living in the UK, who will experience a social media ban for children under 16, starting in spring 2027. These changes have been controversial for a variety of reasons, but they mainly focus on protecting young social media users rather than young creators. Every year, new legislation is passed across the country and world with the goal of preventing children from being exploited as consumers or as moneymakers as the online world continues to grow and becomes more profitable. 24. How to combat the war on autism. While much of the popular conversation about autism seems to have waned, the need for destigmatization and acceptance continues. July is Disability Pride Month, commemorating the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. While the U.S. celebrates 250 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence and other founding documents, 2026 marks only 36 years since the ADA was signed into law. The disability rights movement is beneficial to everyone, making the world more accessible and accepting for anyone living with a disability, temporary or permanent. When government officials fight against this process, it further stigmatizes disabled people, puts a strain on disability advocates, and poisons the well of open-minded public who are receptive to learning about the subject. Autistic people are still doing amazing things and are constantly advocating for more holistic representation in media. The introduction of the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network Barbie helped show what autism in women could look like and sparked a lot of needed conversation about invisible disabilities, showing that we can still work towards acceptance regardless of the political environment. To keep the movement strong, it is important to be a safe space for your disabled friends through inclusion, affirmation, and the normalcy you would offer to anyone else. 25. Inflatables are keeping Portland weird. The protest movement mentioned in this article, No Kings, has continued into 2026. On March 28th, another protest occurred across all 50 states, once again breaking the record for largest single-day protest in U.S. history. After ICE fatally shot Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Houston and Juan Duran Guerrero in Maine, The people of Houston and Maine have revived the energy of Portland with their own protests against the actions of ICE. The anti-immigrant violence that protesters seek to resist has unfortunately continued, leading to a sustained need for voices to be raised in support of vulnerable communities. Inflatable costumes seem to remain a Portland exclusive, but the spirit behind them is spread across the nation. 26. A new kind of campaign. Gen Z, social media, and Mamdani's big win. Mayor Zohran Mamdani is increasing in popularity among New Yorkers, making New York City the place to be for progressive Americans. With the city's basketball team enjoying a win and new policies and initiatives going into effect, New York is undergoing a lot of change and experiencing a lot of new life and energy. Mamdani is loved for his charisma, honesty, and innovation. He connects well with others and makes New Yorkers feel safe and welcome as he prioritizes policies like childcare and affordability for the working class. He seems to be fulfilled in this job as well, expressing no desire to have any other job and shooting down the notion that he would run for president as he is ineligible to run. Mamdani has become the cultural symbol of New York City, exemplifying the passion that makes the city what it is. His identity has been embraced by New Yorkers, even a part of the viral Knicks chant that exploded online. The beginning of his mayoral term seems to be going well, and I'm excited to see what is next for him. Number 27. Remember what we're fighting for. This article was likely the most emotionally taxing for me to write from last year. It can be distressing to engage with topics related to violence, especially related to vulnerable communities and law enforcement officials. The conversation about the deaths of Porter, Good, and Preddy has died down as time continues to pass, but ICE is still out and about. Despite less targeted focus on specific cities, arrest numbers continue to surge without breaking into mainstream conversation. The violence and discrimination never stopped, but the conversations of February 2026 have sparked anew following the recent ICE killings. After celebrating Independence Day on July 4th, it is important to continue this advocacy so that everyone can enjoy the freedom and opportunity we pride ourselves on. The concluding thought of the article still rings true. The U.S. is capable of better, and Americans have to remember what we are fighting for. We are fighting for our rights. We are fighting for our neighbors. We are advocating for peace. That concludes the section about articles. Now let's take a look at the formats: article, podcast, and video. Today's Soapbox began with text-based articles only. After several months, I began producing other formats of content. The most successful format has been YouTube videos, which have had several iterations. Some have been just the podcast episode with a static screen, some have been slideshows, and the most recent video about Glacier National Park contained background music, edited video content, and personal exclusive photography. There are no plans for new formats of content, but I have plans to continue developing them and making them better. Eventually, there are plans to create more short-form content to post to platforms like Instagram Reels, TikTok, and more YouTube Shorts. If you have a preferred style or format of content, make sure to let me know in the comment sections of the platforms. Now let's look to the future. This is Article 28, Top 10 of 2025. For the next Top 10 year-end review, I may expand the categories to include other releases like albums and pop culture moments. The year-end reviews will hopefully be a tradition from here on out and a fun way to look back on the calendar year. With the Today's Soapbox anniversary occurring roughly halfway between year-end reviews, it serves as a way to reflect on what we've accomplished and look ahead to the next year of content. Thank you to everyone who has supported the Soapbox over the last year, especially those who have left feedback through comments and showing support through likes and follows. I'm excited for the next year of content, and I hope you are too. That's all for now. Bye.